Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Research Roadshow. Today is December 11th, and we have a special update on Julian Assange and his situation. Before I get right into it, a couple of housekeeping items. I will be sending out to everybody a questionnaire, short questionnaire, just 4 questions regarding your availability to have Research Roadshow, to permit Research Roadshow to share your email with other people, either in your state or within a certain demographic. For example, only Ospreys that you've known for 5 years. Very short questionnaire. Please look for it in your email because I'm getting too many requests for so-and-so says, can you send me so-and-so's address? Even though we've known each other for 4 years in chat, we don't have each other's emails. So to avoid that, please authorize me to share as far as you're willing to permit. I know that many of you are a little bit hesitant still to share widely your email, but please think about it. The more connections we make, the faster this goes. The other one is that I know with Christmas coming up, everyone is super busy, but please find the time to read to watch at least one show, either ours or John O'Loughlin's or Mark Kulek's, one more show per week, and to spend a little more time in research, maybe 2 hours per week more in research, even with the holidays coming up. It's so important. We're really at a key point right now. All right, I'm going to jump into the first graphic. This is from WikiLeaks homepage. As many of you know, in 2006, roughly, Julian Assange and 6 others started off WikiLeaks.org, a website with the intention of exposing corruption in government, not just the U.S. federal government, but different state governments around the world. At the federal, county, province level, and at least for the first 7 or 8 years, you have to admit that WikiLeaks was pretty apolitical. They were neither left nor right, nor European left or European right. They were pretty much across the board. They applied the embarrassment equally across all parties. But lately, I think it's going a little bit, they're not quite as apolitical as they used to be. However, please check out WikiLeaks, their top 5 articles. Give it a real brief glance, spend a minute on each article. I think they're worthwhile. Especially this one, the top story, the Intolerance Network. That's worth a look. Now let's talk for a few minutes about the fact that several people have mentioned to me that, John, Julian Assange was a limited hangout, or he was always in Russia's back pocket, or he was always in the deep state's pocket. That may or may not be true. What is true is that the WikiLeaks reveals, at least up until 2019, not a single email or fax or undersea cable was ever challenged by any government official. That is important. And a good example, or an example of why that is a big thing for some pretty powerful people, is let's bring up the example of Elsevier. Elsevier is one of the top 3 publishers of technical information and scientific information in the world. Let's see if I can bring up their homepage. And for most of the past 30 years, I've been proofreading or translating technical documents, IEEE documents, scientific papers for publication in journals such as those that Elsevier publishes. Now, one of my students, I think this was back in 2016, might have been 2015. He was a biomedical engineering student. And Antonio, if you're watching this, you know it's you. He was trying to quote a WikiLeaks post. It was I'm not sure if it was a CDC article or an NIH article, memorandum that was leaked by one of those two organizations, the CDC or the NIH. It was found in a tranche of documents that WikiLeaks had brought out, and the publisher, it was Elsevier, or an Elsevier-based publisher, that said, no, we can't accept it. You have to first remove the WikiLeaks reference. And so Antonio was a bit puzzled by this, and he said, "But it's a genuine article written by the CDC official." And they said, "Well, you have to go find it in another source. You cannot use WikiLeaks as your source of the article." So he eventually took out that reference, and I'm pretty sure that the paper got printed and published in that respective journal. But that thought stuck with me, that the publishing industry, at least the majority of people in Elsevier, are afraid of what WikiLeaks might mean. WikiLeaks, let me go down a bit. WikiLeaks has the power to expose truth even in the scientific domain, meaning they have the power to expose not just the man behind the curtain, but that there is a second curtain and a third curtain and a fourth curtain with multiple people behind each one in the scientific community, and they control the journals. Amazing Polly did a good job of this back in May of this year, talking about the scientific journals, but I think it's important to add this element about WikiLeaks, that the big journals will refuse to publish a document, even if it's a refereed paper or a page from a refereed paper, if WikiLeaks has referenced it, or if WikiLeaks is the only source. I think that's an important additional detail to Amazing Polly's story. Okay, let's bring up a couple of examples. Now, I've talked before on previous episodes about the collateral damage video, where a combat helicopter took out 15 human beings who were just walking around. They were not non-combatants, and I think it was Bradley Manning who released that. He released that video, and that was when WikiLeaks made a big jump in popularity. Though the WikiLeaks website started to get many more visitors per day after that video was released. Obviously, Bradley Manning got called on the carpet for it, and his life became very difficult for a few years. And again, all he was doing was spreading the truth. He thought that in his conscience, and this is an important word that I'll be using frequently. Bradley Manning's conscience bothered him to the point that he had to violate the rules of his station. I'm not sure if he had a security clearance, but if he had one, he had to violate that security clearance in order to publicize this video, to make Americans aware of how their tax money was being spent. All right, where did I put that file? Okay, here's a good example of a WikiLeaks drop. November 2009, WikiLeaks published more than 500,000 pager messages sent within a 24-hour period around September 11th, the terrorist attack that killed nearly 3,000 people in New York City alone. The messages included exchanges from Pentagon, FBI, FEMA, and New York Police Department officials. Underline FEMA. We hope that its entrance into historical record will lead to a nuanced understanding of how this event led to death, opportunism, and war, WikiLeaks said of the release. Now, many of us in the truth community have already seen this, and it helped bolster our claims that there had to be at least a limited amount of insider operation involved with 9/11. It was probably a foreign entity, could have been in the Middle East somewhere, but there had to be a few key officials within the Air Force, within FEMA, within the Pentagon, within the various port authorities that had to be in on it. And now many people, I read a survey a few months ago that 58% of Americans believe that there was something nefarious going on in 9/11. That had to do with their government officials. But what's bothering me now is that even if these formerly accused wrongdoers came forward and openly admitted the whole thing, even if they came out and said, for example, we had to do it in order to push humanity in the right direction so we could go to the stars and go to Mars and beyond and achieve a much better way of life for all human beings. Even if they admitted it, what would the American citizens do? Especially those who live in New York. What would they do if these officials were to come out and admit the wrongdoing? Something has happened to us as a country. I'm speaking just to Americans right now. Something has happened to us where we've become so docile. 58% of us know that there was something not quite right, but we're not demanding the truth. Why is that? Let's go to the next one. Oh, that's not it. Okay. Guantanamo. The next one regards Guantanamo. Everyone around the world has seen the pictures of how our army personnel are treating the prisoners in Guantanamo. And we've had whistleblowers come out and tell us that the torture techniques did not work, or largely didn't work. They obtained very, very little information, useful information, actionable information, for having tortured hundreds of people, even to the point of death. And Americans pretend now that They never saw those pictures. They never read those articles in the alternative news about the horrible treatment that these prisoners were receiving because they might have known something. I'm sorry, let's pull that up. Again, this was more than 12 years ago that these revelations came out about Guantanamo. WikiLeaks published the memos that showed how they were sorry for this, ladies and gentlemen. WikiLeaks published the information showing that the Red Cross inspectors were not allowed to visit the camp. And I think later, after this came out, other inspectors from other United Nations, Red Crescent, they were also not allowed to inspect the conditions of the prisoners. And yet, time has gone on, and the American citizens have just forgotten about it. Why am I bringing these two cases up right now? Because we have a unique opportunity right now during the Christmas holidays to do something positive, but it requires risk. And what do I mean by risk? You've heard the expression, no pain, no gain. We are in an information war. If you do not risk offending the people closest to you by talking about these things that have happened, that the entire world knows about, that WikiLeaks has exposed, if you don't risk offending somebody, or offending their sentiments because they think, for example, I greatly offended a person very close to me in Ohio because he thought Mike DeWine was some great, marvelous guy, and he was for the little guy, and he was for lower taxes, and you name it. And we got into a heated debate, and I said some things in not quite such a diplomatic way, and now he hasn't spoken to me since. But I needed to say those things because Michael DeWine, in the eyes of the Almighty, maybe he is doing good things. But from where I sit and from where other Ospreys in Ohio sit, Michael DeWine is not doing good things for the people of Ohio. He has broken his oath. And yet, despite the fact that these things have come out, not enough Ohioans are risking the affection, are risking even their pocketbook, risking in the case of a small radio broadcaster in Ohio, a Christian broadcaster, he might be risking quite a bit going up against Michael DeWine. It could become even a little dangerous to his health or livelihood to confront Michael DeWine on certain issues, especially when we get back to Connect Voting Solutions and how that might have helped re-elect Governor DeWine. We have gotten away from the idea of risk in America. Every good entrepreneur knows that you have to take calculated risks in order to achieve a certain objective, whether that objective is financial, a short-term financial projection, or a long-term financial projection. You weigh the different risks as best you can, and then you make a number of discrete decisions in line with that risk picture. Okay. Now, each of us Ospreys and others in the truth-seeking community have to do the same thing. Confronted with the information available from WikiLeaks, and I remind you that up until 2019, not a single document was challenged. We have to we have to call upon each other, force each other to examine the hard evidence against their elected officials, and then go in groups of 5 or 6 to their office, get in their face, and say, did you know about this? We know it's true now. WikiLeaks posted it. The entire world knows about this. How come you, County Commissioner, don't know about this? We think you do know about this. What are you doing about it? What concrete steps, especially when it comes to human trafficking? I'm very embarrassed as a person born in Ohio that Ohio is the number 3 state in the union for child trafficking. We've covered in neighborhood news, we covered for 6 months the case of European adoption consultants, and we got a few subscribers, maybe 15 subscribers from Ohio to inquire, to ask for more information, but it's nowhere near the 6 million voters that needed to know about this information. So going back to the concept of risk, Julian took enormous risks by setting up WikiLeaks, by doing the very hard work required to guarantee a person who is thinking about blowing the whistle, to guarantee him or her that his documentation would be safe in his hands, that he or she would not get a 3 a.m. SWAT raid and to be thrown into prison awaiting trial, or just simply disappeared, because that's beginning to happen. Yes, even in the United States, people can be disappeared. And I have a feeling that we're going to come to that hard conclusion in a couple of years. I mean, it's going to face everybody now and again. Sooner or later, that's what I meant to say. All right, Smith-Mundt. We have to take risks because Julian took risks, as many other Americans did, to preserve our liberties. And Julian isn't even an American, but I'm saying he took risks with his life, with his family, with his closest associates and friends. He put their lives on the line in order to bring the truth. Each of us has to use, I know it's the holiday season and everybody wants to be merry and bright and cheerful and get along with everybody else. But if you don't take a few minutes, maybe your brother-in-law lost 10,000 in the stock market this year. You could introduce the idea that, hey, maybe, did you know that some of those guys on Wall Street, they also are involved with big pharma? Did you know that some of those guys on Wall Street, and the response might be, oh, there you go again, Bill or Tom or Harry or John, there you go again, talking about these so-called conspiracies. But many people on Wall Street over the past 50 years have been arrested for conspiracy. There's hundreds and hundreds of sections of U.S. code that talk about conspiracy to commit a crime. Conspiracy is a thing. It's a term used in our U.S. code. So use what opportunities might present themselves to talk about the fact that there is evil in the world, and that the evil has been documented. millions and millions and millions of WikiLeaks documents show of faxes and memos between government officials and government and big pharma and big pharma and FEMA and the Pentagon. These millions of documents have been seen by the whole world. It's time for everyone around the world, but especially Americans, to get in the face of their elected officials and ask them, how much did you know about this? All right, let's go to the next presentation, the next set of documents. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, John, I could lose everything if I go up against my county commissioner, because he knows a powerful senator, and that powerful senator has I'm talking specifically about a senator in Ohio who's very powerful, very well connected to some people down in McLean, Virginia. He could cause me and my business a lot of problems. He could make my life very hard if I were to go up against him. Well, this is how I would say, how I would respond. You are going to suffer a little bit now, or you're going to suffer a lot 6 or 7 years from now. What do I mean by that? And remember, it's contagious. If you have the courage to stand up and risk your small business and the affection of your employees, if you have that courage, it will be contagious. We're going to use the word contagion a lot in the next few days. You're going to cause a contagion of other people will see you standing up to this senator or to your county commissioner, and they'll say they'll get behind you. They will risk to varying degrees their own small businesses, their own family affections. If you don't take the risk now of feeling a lot of pain, you're going to feel much more pain later. I spent much of my career in determining the probability of different outcomes for wartime scenarios. Okay, in particular for the loss or malfunction or not returning to base of a fighter aircraft, for example. For all the different things that can happen along during a sortie or during a series of sorties, what are the different probabilities? What's the probability of outcome X, outcome Y, outcome Z, outcome W? I have looked at what's happening in Europe for a long time, and I don't see much of an escape from a hot war in Europe. If there is a hot war in Europe, and there are some people who could benefit financially and otherwise a great deal from a war. If there is a hot war, I am absolutely convinced that a quarter to a third of young men and a good number of young women will die. I'm absolutely convinced of that. So that is why I joined Neighborhood News, and that's why I helped start Research Roadshow, was because if we don't do the hard work, the tedious hard work required to stave off World War III, that's going to happen. We're going to suffer much greater losses. And the same thing, even if there's not a hot war, there will be severe economic hardship because the the top echelon of the globalists are turning the screws, especially on Europe, and they're going to, if we talk a lot about financial reset, well, the best way to do a financial reset is to bring the entire economy in Europe to a screeching halt, and that will cause a cascade, a series of dominoes, financial dominoes all over the planet. So if we do not risk now, if you don't risk embarrassment, or if you don't, if you try too hard to save face, if you don't risk your small business, you're going to suffer much more later. Okay, so what am I really getting at? In 2012, they overhauled the Smith-Mundt Act that I think went back to 1934. Why did they overhaul it in 2012? Well, because between 2006 and 2010, WikiLeaks came out with such embarrassing information that they realized, especially in Washington and in Brussels, they realized that they had to do something to stop Gavin McFadden and Julian and the 6 other principals at WikiLeaks. They had to put something in place, or a series of measures in place, to stop them, or at least slow them down, and to prevent the growth of WikiLeaks wannabes, people who are inspired by Julian and the others. So the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act was passed in 2012, and I still hope that this group, Research Roadshow, and some of the others, Ospreys, will produce do a concerted effort to get out a manual, a pamphlet on Smith-Mundt. The Smith-Mundt Act was to protect the powers that be from having too much truth come out too fast. Julian inspires people. Whether or not he was part of, or at some point in the trajectory, he got flipped and became part of the deep state, I don't know. That's above my pay grade. I just want to get out the fact that the figure, Julian, inspired me and many other people to do what we're doing now, to pick up the ball, pick up the guidon and run with it. And Julian inspires a lot of people to defend the defenseless. For example, if your neighbor gets dragged away in the middle of the night, how many of us would rush to his aid or her aid? If he or she is called into court for something that we know he didn't do, will we go and give up a few days of our work and defend him in court, or not? The programming, and this is my final point, the programming is very, very good. Up until 10 years ago, I was still very much suffering the effects of my programming. In my college days, in the years at Edwards Air Force Base, the programming was very thorough, very good, and it took a long time to and I still, certain things, like I eat 3 meals a day. Why? Because I was programmed to eat 3 meals a day, when 1 meal would do me fine. Recognizing your own programming, looking in the mirror, trying very hard to, especially if you have vacation days coming up, taking the time to study how you have been programmed and how ways that you can undo your programming, are very important. It's very important that we take this time, because if you don't understand your own programming, you're not going to be able to, what's the old scripture verse? You can't pluck out the beam in your neighbor's eye until you first take out the one in your own. So I guess my final point is, Julian and the others at WikiLeaks gave up so much. I think it behooves all of us to use the Christmas season or the winter season, because in the wintertime you're in the house more, you have more personal contact. You have you don't have in much of the northern hemisphere, you don't have the ability to go outside and run and ski and do all those other things. Use the time where you have close personal contact well. Use the holiday parties well. Take the opportunities that will present themselves to highlight Julian Assange's sacrifice, to underline how WikiLeaks is being chiseled away at, how Elsevier is not publishing anything that WikiLeaks puts out. Use those opportunities as best you can, and with as much tact and diplomacy as you can muster, to further the cause, to move the football downfield, to get more people looking at the real alternative news sites. And by the way, those who haven't seen them yet, the past 4 videos that Professor Hamamoto did were outstanding, and his last talk with John O'Loughlin was outstanding. He's really on a roll, and I encourage you to go watch Professor Hamamoto's latest. Also, please check out Mark Kulak. The last 2 videos he did were really long, but very, very worthwhile. Go check those out. And also John O'Loughlin's and Neighborhood News. Last comment, please smile, be friendly. We are all becoming robots. Be cheerful. No matter how bad it gets, try to smile. Try to think of the people around you. Do what was that bumper sticker I saw years ago? Practice random acts of senseless kindness. Anyway, I'll leave it at that for now. Please pray for Julian Assange, whatever prison he's in, and be good, do good work. Thanks for joining us, and see you tomorrow.